Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe and like. And please visit us at barrykibrick.com, where you'll see all the ways that you can become a patron of our mission and help us continue to build a community of seekers who quest for knowledge, information, and most importantly, wisdom. What makes a product iconic? When we just can look at its outlined form and know immediately what it is. That's what the world-renowned designer Wolfgang Joensson is about to show us. Welcome, I'm Barry Kibrick, and for more than a quarter of a century, Wolfgang has been designing products, making them not only beautiful, but easier to use. And with his book, ICONIX, he shows us what makes an exceptional creation recognizable throughout the world.
Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible in part by Patreon. Patreon helps creators build and run membership businesses, from podcasters to writers, musicians, artists, and more, with tools that allow their fans to become patrons. More information is available at patreon.com.
Wolfgang, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I so much enjoyed this book, and I can't wait to share it with my viewers. Welcome to Between the Lines.
Thank you, Barry. It's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, what caught my attention when I first was exposed to it was that this book, as you say, is about relationships that we have with the objects in our life. And I would never have even thought of that. So when I read of something that I never even think of, that really attracts me. So I want to get into that, the relationships we have with the products in our life.
Yeah, as a designer, that is actually very natural and normal. You are interested in objects as a designer and in products. That's why you study that. That's why you give all the time to creating products.
But you also tell us what makes some of these products. And by the way, the viewers are going to see, we're going to speak about some of the products in specifically, but even though there's so many in here, I'm going to sometimes just show them as we're going. Because they're iconic, people will recognize them. And that's what makes something iconic, is we have this universal recognition of it.
Yes, it is something that we have to share. I'll tell you a little story. When I decided to write the book, I met with two friends, and one said, Wolfgang, people want to know what you think is iconic. They want to see your choice. And the other friend said, Wolfgang, people don't give a damn about what you think is iconic. And I went home, I was puzzled, and I thought that is exactly what defines iconicity. It is an individual response, but it has to be shared by many.
And that is what even makes art. That's why when someone declares something is art, it's because it's shared by many. Not everyone, but by a large percentage of the population says, that's a piece of art. That's a great design.
Yes, it has to touch our emotions. It doesn't work if it's just working. If it's just functional, that's never enough. It has to address our emotions.
Though that is what you truly send home. So I want to go even deeper into that. Our emotions and what we feel when we see or use, actually almost all of these products are usable. I mean, in fact, I don't think there's not a product in here that we don't physically use. I don't think.
No, they're all products. Industrial products.
So go deeper into that emotional aspect that we have with the product.
Well, it is not so easy to understand how something can go beyond function. There's an example of a lemon press, and that has been blasted because apparently it doesn't do the job of pressing lemons very well, and some people have said it's a functional disaster. But I think that focuses only on the technical function. There's much more to a product than the actual function of pressing lemons. There's also it can be a part of a ceremony, and if you make juice for breakfast, for example, it can be a nice present you give to somebody. So to ask it to also press the lemons, well, maybe too much. I don't want to condone products that do not work and do not do their job they are sold for. But it is expanding a lot more beyond the mere technical function what a product does.
And what also makes something iconic is, obviously it is, by the way, it doesn't have to be new. That's something that's very interesting. It's something that could be very familiar, and it's iconic, and like I love the image of the Mixmaster, because it is such a iconic, we all know what the Mixmaster looks like, but it's been looking like that for 100 years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
How is that? How is that even possible?
That is something that I cannot answer. I must, first of all, tell you that at the time it was innovative. None of these products were just Me Too products. They were all innovative at the time. That is a prerequisite for being iconic. You cannot just say, oh, we're doing something like the competition does, and then hoping you will become iconic. So you must have an original idea behind it. At the time it was original. Plus you have to create a form that pleases people in a way that they get this emotional contact to it. And of course then, if your mother has made a cake using that machine, then you have a personal good experience with that, and that helps you to create that emotional liaison.
But it's also, the emotion goes even a little deeper. When I was looking at it, and my mother never used a Mixmaster, is that what it was called? Right, yes, the KitchenAid Mixmaster, KitchenAid. And yet, just by its design, its shape, the way it holds the bowl, you really do get an attachment. You can see how you could get an attachment to it.
There is a sculptural quality to it, no doubt. And that is this embracing of the bowl in this case, yeah.
Now, we're going to discuss your philosophy a little bit later, more on our afterwards segment. But I think this is one of those things that puts your philosophy as well about design along with what makes something iconic. And that is that understanding the user is key to any design solution.
That is true. I mean, I have done a lot of coffee machines. I don't drink coffee. So I really have to understand, what does somebody who really likes his morning coffee expect from that kind of machine? You know, how do you reassure them that this product will produce the best coffee you can imagine? So you have to think you have to really put yourself into that person's shoes.
You go even deeper. You say that every one of the iconic images contains meaning, cultural, historic, social, and emotional, as we talked about. So cultural and historic and social, let's start exploring some of that a little bit. Let's start with cultural first.
The question of culture is a very complex one. The word's roots actually dates back to agriculture. So when somebody says, oh, this is not cultural, that is cultural, I'm always very reluctant to go into that discussion because it's so complex. There's the other thing of appropriation that is discussed very much today. To give you an example, the flip-flops, they were designed not by a Brazilian guy, they were designed for the Brazilian national soccer team in last century, but they were designed by a Scottish guy. But that person obviously understood what beach life means, how this can be expressed. And today we see those flip-flops, we think, oh, we should be on vacation.
Oh, by the way, I found some of the most interesting designs were not made by designers themselves. Now wait, I want to be careful, because once you design something, you are, I guess, a designer. But for instance, the Weber grill, that was a guy that was, what was he, was a boat? Was he on boat buoys, or there was something?
He was in a buoy factory.
A buoy factory, and he came up with this concept.
Yeah, he wanted to do a barbecue, and he thought, well, this is what we can use these buoys for, you know? So he probably made one for himself to test it out, and then realized that it's a successful idea, and there was the Weber grill.
You also say that there is a spiritual aspect to design. I'll use your words. It's a representative of a category, of an era, or of a spirit.
An example for a spiritual aspect is that coffee maker from Bialetti. It has such an iconic look that the owner of the factory, of the company, Mr. Bialetti, understood it. in a way that made him decide that when he passes away, he wanted his ashes to be stored in a giant espresso maker shaped urn. And you can Google that, Bialetti funeral, and you see the bishop or the cardinal, basically doing the ceremony with that ashes in that urn.
I hope they didn't make coffee with that urn, though.
Afterwards, I don't know. No, it's a big.
There's another thing that you teach us about design, and it's that when you see the design, it almost tells you how it works. There's an element to that as well. Even the one that you said, like the juicer, that even wasn't really a great functional design, you still right away knew that it was a lemon squeezer or a juicer of some sort. You could tell that. So it has to have that. That's also something that makes design iconic.
Yeah, that is right. Good design has to be expressive. That's my personal design philosophy too, that you give the user hints how to operate that. You do not want the user to feel stupid and confronted with a product that he doesn't know how to use. We are too often exposed to situations like that, and that is not a nice experience. And we are about experiences, not only about objects.
See, that's what I want to tie in here, because objects really, if your house burns down and you lose every iconic object, it doesn't matter. But what does matter is those experiences you had with that object.
Well, that's what links us. One of the reasons why I wrote that book is that I realized people like that feeling of nostalgia, to be reminded of the past with the help of objects. Of course, you wanted also personal experiences with people, but objects played a role in our past, and they can evoke those emotions, those memories that we have.
The one thing that is, though, also, we can't escape it, and even if it's nostalgic, even if it makes us draw that, it is the innovation itself that's paramount. If a product's going to be iconic, there can't be one like it before.
That is true. The difference between innovation and invention is that invention has an impact on the natural laws, like designing a light bulb, inventing a light bulb. But if, say, you take the zipper and you use a zip fastener to put furniture together, then this is an innovative use of the invention of a zipper. The advantage of innovation in industry is that a designer can plan that. You cannot say, oh, I'm going to invent a light bulb and it'll take me 3 months. It may take years. It was 2,000 materials that Edison used until he came up with a correct one. But innovation is plannable. You can say, I have 3 new ideas how to adjust the height of a tray for different coffee cup sizes for a coffee machine in the next 2 weeks. You can say that, and then you go and do it.
And you know what I found fascinating also is the serendipity sometimes involved in design. And one of them in particular was that luggage factory that went, right, you're laughing, but you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
It was that luggage factory, it caught fire, so all the actual luggage made out of material was destroyed. The only thing that wasn't destroyed was the aluminum that was left in the factory, and that's how you got this iconic design of that aluminum luggage that everyone sees at every airport or wherever they go.
That's really making lemonade out of lemons. I think we often find that the failure leads us to success. I mean, Edison failed 1,999 times, but then number 2,000 was the right material. And today we can say, yeah, he invented the light bulb. We don't say, oh, he failed more than 1,900 times. We don't say that. The information architect Richard Saul Wurman, in his book Information Anxiety, has dedicated a whole chapter to hailing, failing, and still sailing. And I love that chapter and read it out to my students because it shows that, yes, don't be frustrated, don't be discouraged if something doesn't work. Get your motivation out of it to make something better. And if you look at the history of brands or of products, you find very often that there is a problem, and that problem hasn't stopped people, it has encouraged them.
Let's now go into some of the actual icons here. The first one that you bring up, and again, there's 2 things I want to share about this. The simple chair. It was a simple chair, but it became a chair that when you look at it, you've seen that chair everywhere. And then There's another chair called the cantilever chair, and what I found fascinating about that was, and I always say there's this cosmic library, when three people, totally not knowing it, all came up with the same idea at the same time.
Yeah, the first chair you're referring to is the Tonnet number 14, and that's one of the first industrially produced products. Because design, our profession only started with the Industrial Revolution. If you're an architect since 5,000 years, people know you're designing houses, you're building pyramids. But design is so young that you always have to explain what it is. It starts 1850-ish around. And that chair is one of the first industrial design products where they took wood and were bending it over form, and they still produce it the same way today. Two guys taking the steamed piece of wood and bending it over form and drying it overnight. And that became popular because it had a very pleasing form. It was very practical. You could put in a square meter 35 chairs and transport that. That's why a lot of these German and Austrian-made chairs were delivered to South America, where it populated cafes, street cafes, hence the name Vienna Cafe House chair.
I love it. Classic for me, the Swiss Army knife. Now, you shouldn't leave home without one, I say, but you just look at it and right away you know its utility, its form, its function, its style. That one was one of those that encompassed everything for me, just like the knife itself encompasses everything that you could possibly need.
The Swiss Army knife has a fascinating story. I did not know that it was not even Swiss-made originally, because at the time there was no industry that they could go to producing it. So the Swiss Army went to a German factory, that Western Co., that invented it, or basically created it, engineered it, produced it. And then today, of course, all the production is in Switzerland. It is a tool that many Swiss and German and American boys have, girls too. I get one to my daughter, of course, when she joined the Girl Scouts. And it has become the icon not only for knives, but whenever something fulfills several purposes, you say, oh, that's a Swiss Army knife off. You know?
That's right. It's exactly. It has its own terminology. That's truly iconic, isn't it? When its name becomes used as the description of other things.
Yeah, and it is also the quality. It's reliable. It's everything that you want a product to be.
One of the things that you say is probably the most recognizable shape in the world, the Coca-Cola bottle.
Oh, there have been books written about whether it's a female or a male form or a mix of both. It's the first bottle that was patented, and the third one was Dimple, the whiskey. And the bottle has changed in the early years a little bit, but since the 50s there are just minute adaptations to production methods, because it's been produced in plastic and glass and metal. So you have to adjust to that, and then for some automation processes, for filling and transporting, there were some adaptations. But the basic shape can be recognized by everybody, because it's also prevalent. I mean, it exists in every country in the world.
Amazing. The one that because I have a particular affinity for it, was the Angel Poise lamp. And when I say that, I had no idea what it was even called. But now it's the image that Pixar uses as the lamp that we all know. It's animated, it does everything, and yet I have one at home as well, because it's the most practical type of lamp, one of the most practical types of lamps you could have. You can bend it, you can move it, you can raise it, you can lower it. Perfect design.
It adjusts to the user, and that, I think, what makes it so friendly. You have a feeling there's a product that is there for me. I'm not there for the product. Okay, I have to pay money, I have to give some of my hard-earned money away to purchase it, but once it's mine, it does what I want. And that's a nice feeling. You have control over something. For somebody who is OCD like me, you like things that you can control.
Now, something that is iconic, and they'll just, again, you'll see it, you don't have to have the name, you don't have to have anything under it, and yet it's iconic because of its minimalism. That's the Movado watch. That is, you see that and everyone knows that brand right away. It doesn't even have its name on it, it has nothing on it, just the simple dot and the two arms of the minute and the hour hand.
when you think of how many watches have been designed since the existence of watches, it's just amazing. There's a plethora of solutions, and to come up with something that is different than what the others did, to have the courage for minimalism, which really takes courage to say, no, we're not putting our name on, we just rely on the unique dial face to convey the message of our Movado brand. That makes it spectacularly unique.
You say this, and this is about I have a lot of these in my kitchen. I don't even know, is it OXO or is it pronounced OXO? I don't.
OXO. I always call it OXO.
OXO, okay. And you can see, and one of the way that they started was designing it for the elderly. And you use these words, designing for the elderly benefits all of us because better ergonomics are always an advantage. And my gosh, once you buy one of those peelers, you can't go back to the other peeler. It's impossible. That one works, the other doesn't. When you use their pizza cutter, it works better than the other pizza cutter. So there is something about design for functionality, and in this case, strictly for ergonomics and for the elderly so that they can grip it.
Yeah, it's important to design in an inclusive way. You know, you're not designing for one person. You're not designing for yourself. That's what I said when I say I don't drink coffee. I'm not designing for myself. I design for a user group. And of course, my clients want this user group to be as large as possible so they can sell a lot and make the serial production reasonable. And in the case of OXO, it was the attempt to make something that is just better for people that have arthritis. It's easier to hold. And then it turned out, well, maybe it's easier to hold for everybody, you know, and that founded the success of the company that now has this huge array of products, a range, everything you want for the kitchen, they have for you. And I think that that's a great idea to have that inclusive approach.
Well, some companies are actually known for their design, and one of them that when it was funny, I was doing it first just, I like this, I like this, I like that, and then I try to test myself, and sure enough, some of it came from the same company, Braun. Braun is one of those, and you see it. You see the shaver, you see the alarm clock, right away you know what alarm clock it is, you see the calculator, and that calculator's design now is not only Braun's, but it becomes everyone's design afterwards. That's what makes something truly iconic as well, is it's copied. Now the copies may not be iconic, but that original is copied, because when you look at that calculator that Braun designed, there is almost every calculator looks that way.
That is true. Braun stands out because it was one of the first companies that had an all-encompassing approach to design. The packaging, the logo, the graphics, the instruction manual, the products themselves, the exhibition stands, everything was done and supervised by the same designer, with the same group of designers that worked there, led for many years by Dieter Rams, who was a famous designer for good reason.
Well, now let's then go to what I would say now is becoming the most iconic brand of our time, and that's Apple. And all you've got to do is look, and in fact, what I love is the iPhone. All it is in this book and is simply a white line in a rectangular shape with a little darker black in the middle, a little lighter black on the sides, and that you can almost see the indent that you touch.
There's good reason for that, because when, say, a peeler peels, that's a very clear function, and that peeler only peels. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't cut. It just peels. But what does the iPhone do? It tells us the time. It keeps our calendar. It navigates. It manages our social media. It does so many things. So what we expect from a product there basically is just a frame. So the expressiveness of an iPhone is reduced because it is just a frame for all the contents that can appear on there. So there is a good reason to not design it in a more expressive way than it has been done. And of course, again, there is the courage for this minimalism, to really reduce it to the absolute minimum necessary and say, we don't want to take anything away from what happens on the screen.
Wolfgang, I am so grateful that you shared the iconic designs, and when we have a chance in our afterwards segment, we're going to share your own personal philosophy. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure being here.
For joining. It's our pleasure. And thank you all for joining us. Remember, following this episode, you can catch our afterwards feature at barrykibrick.com, when Wolfgang and I chat about his own designs and what he does to make them special. And while there, see all the other ways you can get involved directly with me and the show. Plus, now all our episodes are also available by podcast. So just drop me a line at barrykibrick.com, and I'll personally respond and give you the details. Now, before we do go, I'd like to leave you with these few more words from ICONIX. Design is not science. We cannot measure design, but that it makes it only more exciting and challenging. The most important phenomenon in life escapes such quantification emotions, and though you cannot calculate them, they count. I'm Barry Kibrick. Between form and function and design and science is where our emotions reside. You may not be able to calculate them, but they count, and they should never be ignored. Thank you, Wolfgang.
Thank you, Barry.
My pleasure.
To become part of the Between the Lines family, go to barrykibrick.com. There you can join our book club, participate in Q&As, catch past episodes, listen to Barry's podcasts, read his blog, and experience exclusive online features, all at barrykibrick.com. Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible in part by Patreon. Patreon helps creators build and run membership businesses, from podcasters to writers, musicians, artists, and more, with tools that allow their fans to become patrons. More information is available at patreon.com.